Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the All Inclusive Podcast. I am the host, Shy, and I want to say that it is International Women's Month. That's what March is. And so we have a very special guest today. I'm going to introduce the guest properly. Um, it's a long time coming. It's definitely a long time coming. Uh, I was very intentional this month about my guests. I mean, I'm usually intentional, but super intentional this month. I wanted to spotlight women who have impact in the community, whatever their community looks like. So I don't care if you're a party promoter. I don't care if you are a fashion icon. I don't care if you are an entrepreneur. I don't care if you are an educator. If you are impacting a environment, I want to spotlight you. And I want to say that here at the All Inclusive Podcast, we love you and we appreciate you. So I'm going to start off by my temperature check. My temperature check is hot. I'm always hot on recording days. No matter what's going on, I block it out and I say, hey, it's recording day and we're about to make an impact and we're about to have these conversations and bring all these worlds together. So I'm hot. Now, for my guests, for my wonderful, wonderful guest, I am going to introduce her because, like I said, it's a long time coming. It's been a long time coming. And you've known me for 17 years.
Wow.
Wow. Phew. So I'm getting old.
I was going to say, you watching me grow up.
Yeah, I'm getting old. So here we have Joy Dukes. Joy Dukes is an entrepreneur, a business owner, an educator with over 30 years of leadership experience in the hospitality industry. She attended Ohio State University and simultaneously enlisted in the United States Army Reserve. Upon completion of her bachelor's degree in business administration from Ohio State,
The Ohio State,
the
yeah.
Ohio State, okay? Um, she proceeded to fill her military commitment as a commissioned officer in the United States Army, serving for 6 years on active duty and 14 years as a reservist. After leaving active duty, she had leadership roles as a restaurant manager, general manager, dietary manager, district manager, and corporate training manager. In 2007, she formed AL Dukes Inc., which is where I met you.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. A full service contract management company and purchased her first restaurant and became the owner, which is where we met. She was my employer of Subway,
Yep.
right? She also purchased a second location, which was at Belvedere Square, and she was my employer there. And she graduated with her bachelor's from Ohio State and her master's from the Morgan State University
Absolutely.
in business administration. And she's just an overall entrepreneur, impactful individual. So right now you are a professor,
Yep.
right?
Professor, yes.
And you also teach for the Restaurant Association.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Independent contractor.
And independent contractor. So give it up for Joy Dukes.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for that introduction.
Yes. So let's talk about and fill in the gaps of how you got to where you are now.
Mm-hmm.
As far as not just your foundation of education, but your upbringing.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's something. Fill in the gaps. I never thought about it like that, but I think as you was reading or saying about my background, I kind of thought about what all connected all of that,
Mm-hmm.
and as I think about my life, everything that I've done and everything that I have endeavored in, there's always been two things. I'm working with people and I'm working for people. And if I want to take that back to my upbringing, it goes back to how I was raised. I come from a very, very large family, immediate family from just my mom and my dad to having all the cousins and nephews and nieces staying with us over the course of me growing up. So I've always had that strong sense of what it meant to be part of a community and part of, specifically a family. So that sort of defined my whole life. So everything that I've sought to do and everything that I have been most proud of being part of has had something to do with me being uh, in a community or in a family sort of environment. And that more so than anything led me to leaving traditional employment to becoming, if you want to say, as they say, air quotes, an entrepreneur. Because a lot of the organizations that I worked for, and not like that, I don't want to make it sound like I had a lot of different jobs, but the few places that I was, I would still say, privileged to work for, didn't have the type of environment that made me feel like family. And it goes back to that saying that says, if you can't get a seat at the table, build your own table.
Yes, yes,
And
yes.
I felt the same way about the type of environment that I wanted to work in or be a part of. And I knew that for me, that meant that, if I can't find the type of work environment that I wanted to be in, then maybe I just need to go out there and start my own business and build that type of environment that I wanted people to feel like they were not just associates, but they were part of this thing that I call a work family.
Yes,
You know.
yes, yes. I can actually attest, being your employee, that when you and I first met, um, I had a 3 hour interview. But a part of it was because it literally felt like I was talking to my auntie, my mom. It literally felt that way.
Yeah.
And before we knew it, we were looking like, oh, wow. I felt like I got the job, which I did. um,
Absolutely.
and we've grown not just in the sense of being an employee employer with our relationship, but a mentor, um, a mom figure, uh, and that came also with uh, being disciplined and being told, hey, you kind of going on to the wrong way, and pulling me back. And that sense of community and family is so important. So when we talk about women and how it's International Women's Month, and I think about how women have the power to birth,
Yes. Hmm.
and you birthed being an entrepreneur, but you also birthed, through being an entrepreneur, you birthed impactful relationships with each of your employees.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's talk about that. How do you feel about that? And um, something that you said that was very important was you end up serving people.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
so let's talk about that. How do you feel about, being that impactful figure as a mom or auntie, or however someone would title you?
Yeah. I don't think I ever really thought about it,
Mm-hmm.
like intentionally trying to be in a role of being any of those things.
Mm-hmm.
First and foremost, I can't recall myself ever having an employee. I never called anyone who came into my world, into my work environment on my team.
Mm-hmm.
That just always been my mindset, that starting back from me just coming into starting a business and wanting to create that family environment, there were just certain terms that I knew weren't conducive to that. So that just wasn't part of it. So the first thing is it's just my mindset, about it. And, it's funny you mentioned birthing because every associate that worked for me, and it never was even an age thing, I always felt like they were, if you will, my children. And I was always thankful because, I felt thankful because the one thing I never had to go through to have all the children that I was blessed to have was childbirth, so no labor pains. Well, there are other pains, but no labor pains.
Yeah.
But and to, more directly respond to what you asked is that I believe that there are people who are born into certain things. Like I've always known ever since I was young that I was a leader. I've known that, and some people argue with that nature nurture thing, whether you can learn to be something or whether you're born with it. Yeah, intellectually I know that there's a medium there where both of those things matter. But for me, I've always felt that, and I've always embraced it. And I think people who have that ability to impact people in that way. It's not something that you do intentionally. You don't do it for recognition. I know I don't. It's just who I am. I love people, and I love the responsibility of having people who look towards me for certain things. I have been blessed to have that. Again, it started with my mom being a part of a family and having a matriarch.
Yes.
My dad passed away early, so I don't really speak about that in that sense. We wasn't, she became a single mother, not by choice. But having just a strong matriarch and being under someone who embraced having the responsibility of lives and knowing how to carry that's always been something that I took on, and I'm thankful for it. Because just as much as, you can say to me, I've mentored you and so many other people who've come into my life has mentored me. So it's been that exchange, As much as I give back. That reciprocity happens.
Yes, yes, yes. I definitely can say, because we could go a little bit about our relationship. Meeting at 17, uh, one of the things that I wasn't was out. Uh, and when you met me, I was really heavy in like church and stuff like that. And my faith is my superpower.
Wow.
And I said that a few days ago. I was feeling kind of down, but sometimes when I'm down, I I definitely I'll go on social media and I'll post something positive, because even though I'm feeling down at that moment, I want the world to get something positive,
Absolutely, yeah.
something positive. Um, and what I posted was my faith is my superpower, and I've pulled on my superpower to record my last few episodes because I was going through the transition, knowing that my grandmother was transitioning, and then her transitioning,
Right.
and now, you know, dealing with the grief of her transitioning and still having to live life
Yeah.
and be fruitful and multiply, and also just be impactful. The key word today is the impact.
Yeah.
Um, and so faith is my superpower. It doesn't look the same way it looked at 17, but it's an evolution of what it looks like. So I'm not on the pulpit or I'm not doing poetry in church, but every time I get an opportunity to speak to someone, my goal is to impact, to pour into, and that's based off of my faith.
Yes.
Because I know that no matter what is happening around me, it's happening for me and not to me.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a wonderful place to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think we can get far in life if we don't have faith. That ability to know that what you're doing is what you're supposed to be doing. And if you're called to do it, that's your strength to be able to step into it and without knowing, like, what is tomorrow going to be like? Or what is this next thing that's going to happen? Is it going to be what I expect?
Yeah.
And still have the commitment and the belief that no matter what, I can do this or I can endure that or whatever happens, that'll be okay.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be all right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to tie that into our relationship, you were talking about leadership.
Mm-hmm.
And it was about 2 or 3 months after I started working for your establishment. And you came to me and you said, hey, I want you to lead. Right? And
I saw that in you right away.
Right. And I was like,
in those 3 hours.
I was like, lead. And I was working another job too.
Yeah.
We got some funny stories. I mean, I would leave one job with a uniform on and come to the next job and say, hey, do you got a shirt? Because I don't have a shirt. And they would say, listen, I don't care. As long as you're here, you can wear the other job's shirt. And I was like, Lee, at 17, I considered myself mature, but there were areas that I was immature in. And a part of my immaturity that I can admit now is I just didn't want to lead.
Yeah.
Like, I'm a natural born leader.
Yeah.
And I did not want to lead. I said, I'm not working the other job because they want me to lead. Then I go to the other job and now they want me to lead. And my current job, which I'm blessed that you and my current boss was able to meet and interact because you guys remind me so much of each other. And she's like, she doesn't give me the title, but I have the responsibility to lead. And I'm just like,
can't hide.
I can't hide.
Can't hide.
And I just wanted to be mediocre. I just wanted to be mediocre. Right. But when you're born and you're not mediocre, it's going to chase you down.
Yeah.
It's going to chase you down. So, with our relationship, you came to me, you said that you wanted me to lead. I was like, okay, fine, I'll lead because, I mean, you pretty much handed me the keys to the store. So I was just like, okay, I guess I'm leading. And now I look at how our conversations about me leading, it doesn't feel like a burden. It feels like this is what I'm supposed to do and it's a responsibility. And not just leading in the job arena, but leading a family.
Yeah.
Leading in motherhood, leading in sisterhood, leading in, being a daughter, and all the areas that I'm responsible for and people I'm responsible for, I no longer fight that. And a part of it was because when you and I talk, you make me accountable.
Yes.
For things. And accountability is a word that I don't just use now, that I walk into. And the people around me, if they can't make me accountable for not just my good, but for the things that I'm lacking in, then why are we even having this conversation?
Yeah. And that's the thing. If you can recall, we would have those conversations about responsibility and accountability, right?
Yes.
And accountability is that thing that you can never pass on. Like you can delegate responsibility and say, hey, I'm a hold you to do this, and you can use the word hold. But if they fall short, and it's something that falls under your area of concern, or people accounting towards you to make sure it ultimately gets done, that's that accountability thing. And if the person who you delegated that to, they may have been responsible, but you've got to stay on top of that.
Yeah.
And I think you're kind of just reaffirming what I'm saying about, hey, when you are a certain type, people see that. It's people out here, and I'm sure you've come across them, who want to be leaders, who want to assume the front role, be out, in front of the crowd, so to speak, for a whole gamut of reasons. But they may not necessarily be the person who others think that, hey, this is a person that I want to follow or a person that I can respect. And that's because where it comes from.
Yeah.
And, I'm a firm believer that those types of characteristics, yeah, they might be a product of how we were raised, but it's something intuitive. It's something that's, not self-serving about it.
Yeah.
And then, that your rewards just come from your contributions. You don't worry about how I'm being viewed. You don't worry about what's being said. You don't worry about, am I being, again, recognized? Am I getting awards? Your reward comes from your contributions.
Yeah.
And that, that's enough. And,
Yeah.
and oftentimes it's more than you expect. And it just vicariously, just by circumstance gives you the things that other people are working real hard at. Like, I don't have to pick up the phone and say, hey, like, you call me, right?
Right.
And I'm honored to be here. This is to me, you my Oprah, right? So, and I mean, people see those things, and when you call me, the first thing that I said in the conversation, you sure you got the right person? Because I'm very humbled by others who recognize anything that I do. And when you reminded me of the things that I have done and how they have impacted others,
yes,
I had to sit in that.
Yeah.
And say, yeah. And when others tell you, it's not something that you have to boast or brag about.
Right.
And that's my fuel that keeps me going.
Yeah.
So if it doesn't come in a trophy, if it doesn't come on a nice piece of sturdy paper inside of a nice, folder or on a plaque, this is just as good.
Yeah.
And that is better. So I'm on BET tonight.
Thank you. Yeah. Something that I had to stop saying was, I got a little podcast. I changed my verbiage. This is a big podcast.
Yeah.
This is an impactful podcast. This podcast is going to change lives. And another thing I stopped doing early on was watching views. I would literally post, like, a episode would drop, and the next day I would be like, probably sooner, honestly. A few hours and I'm like, oh my God, I only got 3 views. But when I get a message that says, hey, I seen this episode and I never thought of it this way, that's where my reward comes from. Like you said, your rewards. And I really believe that the most successful person is the most greatest servant.
Yeah.
And not self-serving, but serve others. And in return, service is going to come to you. In return, I have a saying, God guards. He's going to guard. Life's, but God is going to guard. And one of the greatest conversations that I had this week was about, besides this one, was about how it may seem on the outside world that you want things, but for me, those intangible, the peace, the joy, the wisdom, I'm big on wisdom. I want to sit under someone who has more wisdom than me, that has more experience than me.
Yeah.
Because I could learn so much from that person. So we're going to transition into how now you are a professor. And you are teaching.
I got to stop you there, and we're gonna go there though. But it's interesting you said that, because I was with another associate amount of friend, and we both are kind of in the mentoring roles, and we were just sharing with each other, like, man, how much we enjoy being the dumbest person in the room. Like, because when you're mentoring a lot, the expectation is that
yes,
or that you some subject matter expert, or you have all this experience and you can just kind of put your hand on somebody's forehead and bless them, and then they're going to go off and do great things because of something you said, or sort of coach them through. But we learn so much in people who sometimes perceive wherever you are, if you've achieved anything that they define as success and you've kind of achieved a level that they think is recognizable, then they think you have arrived somewhere. And no, all of us have so much to learn. So Now that we're going to transition into education, you know, that is my impetus for staying in education, is because I'm constantly hungry to learn, and I'm constantly trying to keep myself around people and circumstances that can feed into me knowledge. Knowledge, because as Dr. King said, that's truly where our
Power comes on.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So, with you being an educator, uh, how would you, and I want to use the right terms, right?
breathe,
Right.
just breathe,
Right.
take your time.
Because, being politically correct, right? How would you describe the generation that you are teaching now from an educational standpoint, especially we could tie into like the accessibility is more, but it seems like the practicability is less.
Okay, that is a multi-dimensional question, and it's a very good question. It's a great question. The way that I would describe it, and again, comes from a recent conversation. I was enlightened because I was trying to put into words what is happening between grade school and post-secondary education, like how the students are arriving at the institutions that I'm teaching at. And I feel like I am in a position to really assess it, because I teach at two different universities, and they're different. One's a private institution, and the other one is a HBCU. So one would try to say that there's a different innately by just the tag lines that they carry, right? So I think I have what they say, maybe a good sample.
Yes. Yes.
two
yes.
good
Yes.
two good samples and two good sample sizes, because I've been teaching for years now. And I say that, I preference that this way, to say that what I'm seeing is common amongst both.
Wow.
It's common amongst both. So now I can move forward. So the conversation that I was having with this person who understands education as well, is an educator as well, and I'm trying to figure out what's happening. And he said to me, the reason why a college degree is now seen equivalent to what used to be a high school degree is that college is becoming remedial. Almost to say that when you get a college degree, you're now where you should have been when you graduated from high school. So we get you back there.
Wow.
Or we cover the things, or try to teach or reinforce or revisit those things that you should have gotten in high school. And we spend a requisite amount of time doing that. So now that degree has become conflated with just being on that level, right? Now here's the answer to your question, because you asked me, what am I seeing? So when students come to college with that, what happens is that we find ourselves with a generation who, to get from high school, the things that they have learned to do was sufficient for high school. And then they come into the collegiate level, and those skills or the knowledge base it's not even sufficient for college, nor is some of the things that they know to do necessary for college. So let's understand what that means. So you have two things now, or two, I would say, concepts: necessary and sufficient. So when you have things that are necessary, for example, let's say if you wanted to purchase a home, and I'm just going to use a very crude analogy, because it's more things go into purchasing a home.
Right.
But let's say that you have to purchase a home, and there's two things that you need. One is credit, good credit, and the other would be the funds to make the necessary down payment.
Right.
So you need the credit and you need the funds. So without either, you don't have what is sufficient to purchase a home. So you need both of those. Both of those are necessary, but either one is not sufficient.
Right.
You need both. So here's how I come to understand, or maybe can relate this to what's showing up from grade school to college. So in high school, and I'm gonna try to preface this by saying I'm not educating in high school, so I'm making some assumptions here, but I am, I think, qualified to say what I see on a collegiate level. But and my assumptions come from what they bring to the classroom.
Okay.
So in high school, they're learning how to use all of the Internet of Things and AI tools and all of those things, which obviously, if they're in college, it was sufficient for them to use those tools to graduate. Sufficient. Now they get to college, being able to do those things or utilize those tools and uh, integrating them into maybe completing their requirements in high school, their coursework, writing essays or whatever they were doing. Those things are neither sufficient and to some degree not even necessary. Because once you get to college, your cognitive skills and your analytical skills need to be intact.
Yes.
So if you are overly dependent on those tools and resources which were sufficient to get you an high school degree, although you might be able to utilize them in college, they're neither necessary and they're definitely not sufficient. So now here's where the remedial comes in. We as educators now have to get them to back to teaching or understanding or revisiting the things that are necessary so that they can get the tools that are sufficient for them to get their collegiate degree. And that accepting that as an educator on a college level helps me to be a better leader for them, a better facilitator, because I never call myself a teacher. Professor I like, but I never call myself a teacher. Because teaching to me is just one dynamic of education.
Okay.
We all teach in a classroom, but I facilitate what happens in the classroom. But and hope my hopes is that sort of helps you understand it before we get into what it really looks like, the level of of concern maybe that I may have, or some of the things that I've experienced that might be frustrating, and then we talk about the entitlement of this generation and things like that. If I just keep focused on the education of it all and my role as a facilitator, as an educator, then I don't worry too much about the some of the characteristics of millennials and Gen Zs and this and that and the third. I'm entitled too. The way I feel about things that I've done in my life and what I've earned. So I have a certain air, if you will, of entitlement to myself. So I don't let that hinder me. But I think it's important that we understand. I think you were alluding to like some way like access might be more available, especially to our community. I'm Black. I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah.
But I'm Black. Yes, the numbers are higher in that sense, and maybe the support like with grants and financial aid, which is a whole nother road we can go down.
Yes.
In terms of disparity. But yes, we have that, we definitely can argue that there is more accessibility, and maybe people from certain economic situations might not feel like they have any more access than they did 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago. But in reality, there is more access because there are more support and more funding to get us there.
Yes.
However, now that we are somewhat coming through the doors, there are those problems that we're seeing because, the educational system that happens before our kids get to college, something is happening that's not going in the right direction.
Yeah. And when I talk about the practicability, also, I think about the fact that most kids, and I'm going to go back a little bit and say that a lot of educators that I talk to that are in the lower levels um, are like, this is not a COVID issue. This is this is bigger than COVID because COVID was in 2020. Your child was in the seventh grade, reading on the third grade level.
Yeah.
So this was before COVID.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a real thing. And COVID in so many ways exposed
Exposed,
a lot
yes.
of things.
Yes,
And
yes,
so,
yes.
you can't just assess it to that,
Mm-hmm.
because that definitely is a real thing. And the question becomes, especially when you talk about
Mm-hmm.
Baltimore City, and in the metropolitan area, how can we spend so much and have the results that we have?
Yes.
You know?
Yes. But that also ties into what you said in the very beginning. The sense of community
Mm-hmm.
lacks in a lot of areas. Lower economic areas, the sense of communities when you have children raising children,
Mm-hmm.
when you have transgenerational households
Mm-hmm.
where you have the grandmother who is the main influence. But if the grandmother is 32
Yeah.
and she hasn't begun to live her life, honestly, um, the sense of community looks different. You use the word matriarch, and you know, I knew Nana
Mm-hmm.
and loved Nana, and she was truly a matriarch,
Mm-hmm.
and her impact is definitely felt even now as
Of
we're
course.
talking.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it's just it's a lot of systemic issues that a lot of people don't want to talk about,
Mm-hmm.
that we don't want to admit to. So, how do we get from all of these systemic issues, all of this accessibility that we have, but now children don't even know, or teenagers don't even know, to wear a polo shirt and some khakis to an interview?
Yeah. Yeah. It's us, the adults have to
Mm-hmm.
take responsibility
Mm-hmm.
for that. And I'll go a level above and say, be accountable.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only way. To me, that's the only way. Because as I hear others, talk about the lack of opportunity,
Mm-hmm.
there is no lack of opportunity, in a sense that there are a multitude of programs. And here's an example. At the university that I'm at, there are so many scholarships
Mm-hmm.
that go unawarded. There are positions that I know of, like people I know who are in the community who have businesses
Mm-hmm.
that are available.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, two areas that we talk about a lot,
Right.
paying for school and finding a job.
Right.
I mean, it's probably not a week that doesn't go by where one of those two things don't come across me with my connections, because what I do mostly is a bridge. I try to connect people
Okay.
to resources. So I'm constantly talking to both entities. Somebody's looking for something and somebody who has something available. And it's not a week that goes by where I don't see those two things always there. And so when you say that, how do we deal with, or how do we correct things in the community that seems so desperate?
Mm-hmm.
It's going to take people who are like myself, like you, for one, the adults, to get involved,
Mm-hmm.
to serve, to make people aware of the resources that are out there. I tell people who want to get into entrepreneurship, who want to start businesses, there are so many grants, loans, training. I mean, you name it.
Mm-hmm.
There is no excuse to say that I can't.
Mm-hmm.
It's, do you want to? And are you willing to do what it takes to make that happen? And when we say it like that, especially when we don't say it in a motivational setting, like I'm not standing on a stage trying to get you all fired up. When we're saying it like we are in this, one-to-one, or in an intimate room, or I'm talking to somebody who all, comes to me and say, hey, I got this great idea, or I have this business I want to do. And then I sit them down and say, are you willing to do what it takes?
Yeah.
Then it sounds very challenging, and sometimes they seem overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a lot of resources out there. And right now, in today's world, because there's this, how can I say, this emphasis or this a focus that's being placed on the marginalized and disadvantaged communities, there is a lot of support in many different forms. So, most of us think about things financially because that's the place that we are in most desperately out, money, money, money. So when we want to do something, first thing we think about is, can I afford it? Or can I, make it happen? If it's like a business, do I have the resources? So it all sometimes ties into money. So I oftentimes mention that a lot. Like, there's a lot of funding out there, but it's a lot of resources for us in our community in many other ways. Mental health, there's I know we strive with our children to try to find them extracurricular things, but there are programs out here. If you look at the news and you see them talking about transparency with all of these nonprofit organizations doing all of this stuff, you could listen to that and think, hey, yeah, we need to find out how they spending the money. Or you can kind of really hear what they saying. It's a lot of programs out here that's doing some work.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you want to find out. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing to try to find out how they spending our tax dollars. But did you just hear what they said? It's a list of all of these organizations that's supposedly doing X, Y, and Z. I'm encouraged by that. So rather than let them go ahead and do their investigations and do all of that. But can we, as the community, get our kids involved in those organizations, support, that man or that woman who decided to take the time out of their life to start this organization to help the community from adults to children? Can you find out what that is and send your child to that?
Yeah.
I mean, at the university during the summer, we have all of these summer programs.
Yes.
And you see the kids. So although there is some truth to that, we need more help in our communities, there's help there that's not being taken advantage of.
Yeah. And all of that all ties into why we're even here today. Is because you were raised in a community, you stretched your hand out, and because of that, you've impacted so many lives. I mean, I'm just one life that you've impacted. And I'm not going to cry because, but the journey has been beautiful. Has it been tough? Has it been some bumps in the road? Yeah. But the journey, and you've known me for 17 years, has been a beautiful journey. I'm going to end with a quote that I gave you and you used doing
I remember.
Doing Toastmasters.
One of my Toastmasters teachers.
One of your Toastmasters teachers. And I was so proud of your speech. And the quote is that at the end of the tunnel, there's light. If you just push through.
Yes, ma'am.
If you just push through, there is a light. And every day I wake up, I know that I'm closer to that light.
Yep. It's true. Yeah, that's something you shared with me. It was a spin on that. It's always darkest at the end of the tunnel. But if you could just persevere, if you could just push through, and what's so beautiful about that is we forget when we get to that point where it seems so dark, and it seems so hard, and it seems like, I just can't make it. We forget how far we came just to get to that point. Oof. And all of that energy and all of that strength is still in us. And all we got to do is call on it. And what you said earlier, You know, I don't try to preach or teach ever.
Mm-hmm.
I firmly believe that there is a force that works outside of us. It has to be.
Yeah.
Because there's something that happens when we call for it that gives us the energy, that gives us the strength and give us the ability to push through.
Mm-hmm.
And that don't come from us, but it comes to us.
Yeah.
And it has to be something divine or great or whatever that thing is.
Yeah.
And that's what I believe in. So I'm blessed. I'm thankful. I'm thankful for this moment. I've learned just sitting here, you know, and anytime anybody says anything to me remotely close to you deserve to be acknowledged,
Mm-hmm.
I'm humbled by that. And I want to end on this because one of the persons that I respect a lot is Shirley Chisholm.
Okay. Okay.
And I keep this in my heart all the time. And one of the things she said is that the rent that you pay for your life for being here is service. And there's going to be a movie, I believe it's going to be on Netflix. Regina King is portraying
Yes.
Shirley Chisholm. And there's a host of other black actors that's in it. And I can't wait to see that movie. And I
Yes.
encourage everyone who's listening
Mm-hmm.
to, you know, to tune in, because knowing that, you know, we're not just here for ourselves
Yeah.
at all. And the minute that we acknowledge that,
Mm-hmm.
the minute we acknowledge that, we'll go on and do greater things. So it's that thing that keeps me going.
Yeah. Yeah. So with that, we are out.